Poor woman pays for an elderly man's groceries after he forgot his wallet. But what happened next changed her life forever. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. Mariana had always lived a simple life. In her small town, everyone knew her as the hard-working woman who could always be seen sweeping the narrow cobblestone streets at dawn. At 55 years old, she had raised her two children, Pedro and Leticia, on her own after her husband left many years ago. Her days were long, filled with work that barely paid enough to cover the basic needs, but Mariana never complained. She took pride in her ability to keep going, despite the struggles that seemed endless. On one particularly chilly morning, as she gathered her coat tighter around her frail body and made her way to the local grocery store, Mariana noticed a frail-looking old man standing by the entrance. His clothes were wrinkled and worn, his eyes distant. Yet there was something dignified about him. He seemed to be struggling with his wallet, patting his pockets over and over, as if expecting money to magically appear. Mariana's heart ached at the sight. She had been in similar situations herself, standing in line, calculating every cent in her pocket, hoping it would be enough. Without thinking twice, she approached the man and softly asked, "Is everything all right, sir?" The old man looked up, startled by her kindness, his voice trembling as he responded, I forgot my wallet at home. I don't know what to do. I'm too ashamed to ask for help." Mariana smiled warmly. "Don't worry, I can help you today." With that, she reached into her own small wallet, counting out just enough to cover the man's groceries, even though she knew it meant sacrificing a little of her own. The cashier rang up the items, basic things, bread, milk, some fruit, and eggs. It wasn't much, but for someone in need, it was everything. Mariana paid the bill, and the man looked at her with tearful gratitude. "Thank you so much. I don't even know how to thank you." "It's nothing," Mariana said, brushing off his thanks as she grabbed her own groceries and prepared to leave. But before she could walk out the door, the old man gently touched her arm. "I insist," he said with a smile that now seemed lighter. "Let me at least repay you one day. You've shown me kindness when I needed it most. I will not forget this." Mariana nodded politely, not expecting to ever see him again. People came and went in her life, and many promises were made in passing that were never fulfilled. She was content with the simple satisfaction of having done a good deed. Days turned into weeks, and Mariana soon forgot about the old man. Life continued as usual, work, chores, and taking care of Pedro, who was now struggling to find a job after finishing school, and Leticia, who was expecting her first child. Mariana's small world was filled with enough challenges to keep her mind occupied. One evening, after an exhausting day, Mariana returned to her modest home to find an unfamiliar envelope sitting on her kitchen table. It had no return address, but her name was written on it in delicate cursive. She opened it curious, and inside was a letter. "Dear Mariana," it began, "I believe you don't really know me, but I never forgot what you did for me that day at the market. I'm not just an ordinary man. I've been testing the hearts of people to see where kindness still exists in this world. And without knowing, you passed a test that few do. Your kindness will not be forgotten." The letter went on to explain that the old man was, in fact, a wealthy businessman who had been disillusioned by the greed he saw in the world. He had hidden his fortune from his family, uncertain of who deserved it. But after meeting Mariana, he had decided she was the kind of person who should benefit from his wealth. At the bottom of the letter was a key and an address. "This key is yours. Go to the address below and you will understand." Mariana's hands trembled as she reread the letter, disbelief clouding her thoughts. Could this be real? Was this some kind of elaborate joke? She had seen enough in life to be skeptical of such grand gestures. And yet there was something in the way the man had spoken that day, his sincerity, his vulnerability, that made her want to believe. That weekend, she decided to follow the instructions. With the key in hand, she traveled to the address listed in the letter, which led her to a grand but dilapidated house on the outskirts of town. It was a mansion, far bigger than anything she had ever imagined owning. The garden was overgrown, the windows clouded with dust, but there was an air of forgotten elegance about the place. Hesitant, she approached the front door and used the key. It fit perfectly, and with a turn of the lock, the door creaked open. Inside, the house was eerily silent, but everything was left as if someone had walked out only minutes ago. Furniture covered in white sheets, a faint smell of wood polish in the air. As she explored further, she came across a large painting hanging in the dining room. The portrait was of the old man, clean-shaven, wearing an elegant suit, and looking much younger than he had appeared the day she met him. Her eyes scanned the plaque beneath it. João Batista, businessman and philanthropist. Mariana's heart raced as she continued to explore the house. Why had this man chosen her? What was the purpose of all this? It was overwhelming. She felt like she had stepped into someone else's life. Someone much more important, more deserving. And then, in the center of the living room, she found a small safe. It was locked, but next to it was a note. "Use the key I gave you." Mariana hurriedly fumbled with the key, her mind spinning with possibilities. When the safe opened, she gasped. Inside were stacks of cash, legal documents, and a letter addressed to her once again. "Mariana, what you see is only the beginning. This fortune will be yours to manage, but with one condition. You must continue to help others as you did for me. That is the true test." Mariana stared at the stacks of money, her heart pounding in her chest. The letter felt heavy in her trembling hands. She reread the words, "You must continue to help others as you did for me." The idea of suddenly possessing so much money was unfathomable. Her entire life had been spent struggling to make ends meet, and now this mysterious man had left her a fortune, but not without strings attached. She would need to prove herself worthy by continuing the kindness she had shown him. For a long time, Mariana just sat there, overwhelmed by the possibilities. What would she do with so much wealth? How could she change her life? And more importantly, the lives of others. There was excitement bubbling within her, but also a deep fear. Fear of what people might think. Fear of losing herself in this newfound responsibility. She decided to keep the discovery a secret, at least for the time being. Her children were struggling, and though she longed to tell them, she didn't want to risk jeopardizing this incredible gift. She needed time to think, to plan, and to decide how best to use this money. Over the next few weeks, Mariana began to make small but significant changes. First, she quietly paid off her children's debts. Pedro, who had been unable to find steady work, suddenly received a call about a job opening at a local company. Mariana had arranged it through a contact, but she never told him. Letitia, who was overwhelmed with medical bills from her pregnancy complications, found that her debts had mysteriously disappeared. Mariana paid them without saying a word. The money from the safe was not infinite, but it was enough to make a difference in the lives of those closest to her. She began volunteering at the local food bank, helping families who were struggling, all while still keeping her humble job as a street cleaner. People in the town noticed how Mariana seemed lighter, less burdened, but no one could quite figure out what had changed. One morning, as Mariana was sweeping the streets, she saw the same old man again, sitting on a bench at the park. Her heart skipped a beat. He was dressed in the same worn clothes, but there was something different about him, an air of contentment, as if he was watching the world with new eyes. "Good morning," Mariana greeted him, a smile creeping onto her face. "I didn't expect to see you again." He looked at her, his eyes twinkling with warmth. "Good morning, Mariana. How have you been?" For a moment, she considered telling him everything that had happened since they last met, but she hesitated. Instead, she sat beside him, looking out at the park where children played and elderly couples strolled hand in hand. "I've been good," she finally said, her voice soft. "I've been thinking a lot about that day." The man nodded slowly. "It's strange how a single act of kindness can change everything, isn't it?" Mariana glanced at him, wondering if he knew just how much her life had changed. But before she could say anything, he stood up, his frail frame rising with surprising ease. "Remember, Mariana," he said, his voice still calm but full of meaning. "True wealth is in the heart, not in the pocket." With that, he walked away, disappearing into the crowd of the park. Mariana watched him go, her mind swirling with questions she wasn't sure she'd ever get answers to. As weeks turned into months, Mariana's life continued to improve, but with it came new challenges. One evening, she received a call from an unknown number. On the other end was a lawyer representing the estate of João Batista, the man she had met in the grocery store. "Mrs. Mariana," the lawyer began, "I am the legal representative of Mr. João Batista. It seems he left instructions to discuss a very important matter with you." Mariana's heart raced as she listened. The lawyer explained that João Batista had passed away quietly in his sleep, but before his death, he had arranged for one final test of her character. João's fortune, far greater than what she had discovered in the safe, was to be placed in a trust fund, but it came with a condition. Mariana would be in charge of allocating the funds to help those in need. She would be given control of a charity João had founded years ago, but she would have to decide how to use the money. The lawyer continued, "He trusted you to keep his mission of helping others alive. There is a fundraising event soon where many investors will be present, and he would like you to be the representative." Mariana felt a lump form in her throat. She had never been the kind of person to attend charity galas or rub shoulders with the wealthy. Her life had been spent working hard, keeping her head down, and surviving. Now, she was being asked to step into a world she didn't understand. "I don't know if I'm the right person for this," Mariana said, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "Mr. Batista believed you were," the lawyer replied gently. "He saw in you what few do, the capacity to do good without expecting anything in return. It's not about the money, it's about your generous soul." Mariana remained silent, her mind racing. She knew deep down that she couldn't refuse. João had trusted her, and she owed it to him, and to herself, to try. On the day of the charity event, Mariana stood nervously in front of a mirror. She wore a simple but elegant dress, one she had saved for special occasions, but rarely had a reason to wear. Her reflection felt like that of a stranger. How had she gone from sweeping the streets to attending an event where wealthy investors and philanthropists would be gathered? She arrived at the grand venue, her heart pounding as she walked through the tall glass doors. The ballroom was filled with people, men and women in expensive suits and gowns, sipping champagne and talking in hushed tones. Mariana felt out of place, as if she didn't belong, but she reminded herself of João's words. This was not about appearances or wealth. It was about doing good. The evening progressed, and Mariana was introduced to several key figures in the charity world. She listened attentively, learning about the different causes they supported. But it wasn't until the main event, when she was called to speak in front of the room, that she truly understood the weight of her new role. Standing at the podium, her hands gripping the edges tightly, Mariana looked out at the faces in the crowd. They were expecting her to say something profound, something inspiring. But all she could think about was the old man in the grocery store and the kindness she had shown him that day. "I never imagined I'd be here," she began, her voice quiet but steady. "But I've learned that it doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is what you do. I'm not rich or powerful, but I believe that all of us have the power to change the world, starting with small acts of kindness." The room fell silent as she continued to speak from the heart. Mariana told her story, how she had met João, how her life had changed since that fateful day, and how she now had the opportunity to help others. "I promise," she concluded, "that I will continue to honor João's legacy by helping those in need, just as he helped me. This is not my wealth. It belongs to all of us, to be shared with those who need it most." Mariana's speech was met with thunderous applause. She had spoken from the heart, and her words resonated with a room full of people who had become used to seeing wealth and power as a symbol of status. But here was a simple woman with no background in philanthropy, speaking with an honesty they rarely encountered. After the event, several people approached her, offering their congratulations and support. Among them was a man named Augusto, a well-known investor in charitable causes. He was tall, with a kind smile and a calm demeanor. "Congratulations, Mrs. Mariana," he said, extending his hand. "What you said was inspiring. I'd like to discuss ways to collaborate in the future. I believe we can do something great together." Mariana, still a little overwhelmed by everything that had happened, smiled and shook his hand. "Thank you. I just want to help people like Joao help me. Augusto nodded, his eyes softening with understanding. I knew Joao many years ago. He was a man of vision, but also someone who believed in the power of kindness. He wouldn't have chosen you if he didn't believe you could make a great difference. They spoke for a while longer, discussing possible projects, but Mariana remained cautious. She didn't want to be swept away by promises or grand ideas. Her focus remained on the people who needed help the most, the families in her community who struggled as she once had. Months passed, and Mariana's role within Joao's foundation grew. She began managing various projects, funding programs that provided food, shelter, and education for the underprivileged. The responsibilities were great, but she remained humble, continuing to live in her modest home and working tirelessly to ensure the money was used wisely. But with her newfound position came challenges. Some people in the town began to look at her differently. There were whispers behind her back, rumors that she had somehow cheated her way into wealth. Her children, who were initially grateful for the help, began to question why she had kept so many things secret. "Why didn't you tell us about Joao Batista before?" Pedro asked one evening, frustration in his voice. "It's like you were hiding something from us." Mariana sighed, knowing this moment would come. "I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know if you'd understand. It's not just about the money, Pedro. It's about doing good with it. I didn't want you to focus on what this fortune could bring, but on how it could change the lives of others." Pedro crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. "I just wanted to know, Mom. We're a family, and this affects us too." Letitia, sitting quietly at the kitchen table, finally spoke. "She's right, Pedro. Our mother did this for us and for others. If it weren't for her, you wouldn't have your job right now." Mariana felt a wave of relief as Letitia defended her. But she knew this was only the beginning of the struggles she might face. The more she helped others, the more she realized that people's perceptions of her had changed. Some saw her as a savior, while others viewed her with suspicion. One evening, Mariana received an anonymous letter in the mail. It was short and cold. "Don't forget where you came from. Money changes people." She stared at the letter for a long time, the words echoing in her mind. Was she changing? Was the wealth affecting her more than she realized? Doubts crept in, and for the first time since that day at the grocery store, she felt unsure of herself. The doubts gnawed at her for days, and eventually, she sought out the only person she felt could give her clarity, Joao's lawyer. She visited his office, a modest building in the center of town, where he greeted her with a warm smile. "Mrs. Mariana, how can I help you?" he asked, sensing her unease. "I need to understand," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "Joao left this fortune to me, but I feel like it's causing more harm than good. People are talking, questioning my motives. I never wanted this power. I just wanted to help." The lawyer listened patiently, his expression thoughtful. "Joao knew that this would not be easy for you. That's why he chose you. He believed that true kindness comes from those who are willing to endure hardship for the sake of others. What you're facing now, these doubts, these accusations, it's all part of the test." Mariana looked down at her hands, wringing them together nervously. "I'm not sure if I'm strong enough." "You are," the lawyer said firmly. "Joao wouldn't have given you this responsibility if he didn't believe in you. Remember, it's not about proving anything to others. It's about staying true to yourself." His words gave her some comfort, but the doubts lingered. She left his office with a heavy heart, unsure of how to navigate the complicated path ahead. In the months that followed, Mariana continued her work with renewed determination, despite the challenges she faced. She invested in community projects, helped struggling families, and even set up a scholarship fund for children from low-income backgrounds. But the whispers never stopped. The townspeople's skepticism grew, and Mariana felt increasingly isolated. Even her children, though grateful, seemed distant at times, unsure of how to reconcile the mother they had always known with the woman who now controlled a vast fortune. Then, one fateful day, tragedy struck. A fire broke out in a nearby neighborhood, destroying several homes and leaving many families without shelter. Mariana didn't hesitate. She used a significant portion of Joao's remaining funds to rebuild the houses, ensuring that every displaced family had a safe place to stay. It was during this crisis that Mariana's true character shone through. She worked tirelessly, not just donating money, but physically helping with the rebuilding efforts. She spent days at the construction sites, hammering nails and painting walls, side by side with the very people she had set out to help. Her actions spoke louder than any rumors. The town began to see her for who she really was. Not just a woman who had come into money, but someone who genuinely cared about her community. After the fire, the townspeople's attitude toward Mariana shifted. They saw her not as someone who had been mysteriously enriched, but as a beacon of hope in their community. The rumors faded, replaced by stories of her generosity and dedication. Mariana, however, remained humble. She continued to live modestly, never flaunting the wealth she had been entrusted with. She knew that Joao's legacy was not about the money itself, but about the lives it could change. One day, as she sat on the porch of her small home, watching the sunset, Pedro and Leticia joined her. They sat in comfortable silence for a while before Pedro spoke. "I was wrong, Mom," he said quietly. "I didn't understand before, but now I see what you were trying to do. You didn't change because of the money. You changed because you wanted to change the world." Mariana smiled, her heart full. "We always have the power to make a difference, Pedro. It doesn't matter how much we have, but what we do with what we have." Leticia leaned in, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. "We're lucky to have you, Mom." Joao chose the right person. As they sat together, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange, Mariana felt a deep sense of peace. She had fulfilled Joao's trust, and in doing so, had created a legacy of her own. A legacy built not on wealth, but on kindness, perseverance, and the power of a single selfless act. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.